Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host. Folks, we've got a lot on the table today. We've got a lot to talk about, many issues and whatever. I mean, we're expecting, if you will, quite a show, if you will, of whatever. This weekend, this Saturday, understand the Proud Boys from back east are going to be in town, supposedly inciting the riot and this, that, and the other. But, let's be clear about what we're talking about. We're in a presidential race, and a lot of time was set aside for that. From a national perspective, it's all over the place. All due respect, it's a presidential race aspect of it. You've got some folks who support President Trump, the incumbent, and you've got some folks who don't. So you've got the Democrats and the Republicans that are running. Let's keep it in that perspective. For some strange reason, when we identify these names and this, that, and the other, that's really where the incitement comes into play. So I would like to say, respectfully, I mean, we're in a country that is one person per vote, if you will. So think about who you want to vote for, and that's the path you should follow. Other than that, we're not getting into discussion that's talking about making us whole again. We need to be whole again. Very, very important. So with that, let's go on with the show aspect of it. What we're going to talk about today is that we're going to do a little update on what's going on in the Portland metropolitan area. We got quite a guest role, if you will, to talk to this particular issue. And remember Patrick Stupfel, you see him up there right now on the screen, so somewhat there he sits. And then you got Jack Kerfoot, who naturally, as you know, he ran for city council for Nick Fish's seat aspect of it. He's been on the show often. For those of you who haven't been with us, and hopefully you will share this with your neighbors and friends and have them look at the show. Okay, very, very important that you get this information. And then, like I said, Patrick is here, and then Patrick is going to also bring a guest, a person who's actually been involved, if you will, in the whole issue of the resolution of some of the problems we're having, and citing what the definitions of those problems are. Okay, so we got another guest coming on board, and then we're just going to do with that. So what we're going to do first, we're going to give Patrick an opportunity to talk about what's going on in the Portland metropolitan area, and then we'll listen to what he has to say, and then he'll introduce a sort of a special guest that will come on, and then we'll give that person an opportunity to share their thoughts. And after we take a break, we'll come back as a whole, and then we'll just have a general discussion of a lot of the things. But there are all sorts of things you'll see once we get into that particular area. With that, why don't we get Patrick? Patrick, how you doing, bud?
Oh, Bruce, I could be better, I could be worse. Life is always a roller coaster, but roller coasters are indeed fun. So,
yeah. Sorry for the technicality, folks. But anyway, we got a little time. We're still going to have another 30 minutes after we get through breaking here. But the fact of that is, we're going to make it go at this point in time. Okay. What we started out by talking about was that we're going to do an update of what's going on here in the city of Portland. The big thing here is this Saturday. This Saturday, there's going to be supposedly there's supposed to be a protesting by people from outside of the state, if you will. They say Proud Boys, and they're saying Antifa, and the Antifa are local. And they didn't mention anything about someone from Antifa coming into town. He basically talked about the Proud Boy. And I guess I started out when I opened up the show, we talked about the whole idea of who are these groups and whatever. But there are all kinds of groups that are involved in the issues that we have here in the state of Oregon or in the city of Portland. And but realistically, we're talking about the national election aspect of it. These are supporters, these folks who are coming in, who are called Proud Boys, are supporters of the incumbent President Donald Trump. Okay, and then we've got other supporters. In most cases, folks are trying to identify Antifa with the Democratic side, the Biden folks. So that's what we're looking at. So I don't want us to get confused about this issue. It's very, very serious. You got me? So let's get down to the facts. So what we were getting ready to do is get ready to talk to what were some of the events that we were dealing with. One of the major events, and I was getting Jack to get in on board on this particular issue, was that the governor was having, let's put it, not the governor, but the city of Portland was having problems getting law enforcement, if you will, to supervise, if you will, this whole issue of the folks that are coming into town, this whole issue of protesting this Saturday. Okay, and so the governor jumped in and she said, "Wait a minute." She basically said there's an emergency problem aspect of it, and if the and if the sheriff department, if the Multnomah County Sheriff Department and the state and the I think it's the state police will not work with the Portland police because there's a policy now from the mayor's standpoint that they cannot use the Portland police cannot use tear gas. They could not use the gas, and as a result of that, the state police and Multnomah County Sheriff said no to that, basically participating in with the Portland police to deal with this issue. Now, all of a sudden, we were just talking about this piece, and we were also talking about the fact that it was interesting that the sheriff department, the sheriff is Mike Reese. He is the sheriff. At one point in time, he was the police chief of the Portland police, and he's filling in an elected position, and so he's now the sheriff, but he's now going with the state police. And the two of them now will be doing the law enforcement, basically directed by the governor. The police, this whole issue that we're dealing with on Saturday. So with that, I'm going to throw Jack in, and we were talking a little bit about that. We still had technical difficulty, but I hope that wasn't that long. But Jack, come on in, let's talk. Got me?
Well, Bruce, I watched the press conference from Governor Brown, and she explained that she was bringing in the Oregon State Police and the Sheriff Department from Multnomah County to try and minimize the risk of damage and violence from this coming weekend from a demonstration that's being held by the Proud Boys. They filed for a permit to hold this meeting in a park, and it was turned down because of COVID. But they've decided they're going to have this event anyway. And historically, when they do come to town, most of them out of state, they does draw a reaction from groups with many different philosophies or positions, but basically opposed the position that the Proud Boys and some of the, shall we say, conservative or far right have taken. Now, to me, the issue is that what we have is the governor becoming also the mayor for Portland. Mayor Wheeler has basically withdrawn from interaction in all of these affairs, at least publicly he has. And to me, when you have a real leader, they need to be front and center in the middle of the discussions and middle of the resolution to try and find common purpose. There's one thing we need to, I think perhaps press sometimes throws around terms very quickly, and Antifa is a term that's thrown around very quickly. I remember I watched a few days ago on C-SPAN, Congressman Bernie Thompson, who's in the House of Representatives from the state of Mississippi, interviewed FBI Director Ray on Antifa, and he asked him, "Are you investigating the Antifa?" And he said, "Antifa is an ideology or a movement. It's not an organization." He said, "We investigate specific threats to our country, violent groups that threaten the lives of American citizens, anti-government, anarchist groups that want to overthrow the government. This includes militia and groups that may identify themselves with the philosophy of anti-fascism, but basically people that are threatening harm and damage to our government and to the people of this country." So if someone says that they are an anti-fascist, that's a philosophy. And if you actually go back in time and look at the history of fascism, I would say there are a few people in this country, I would hope, that would actually take a position to support fascism.
Well, but I guess the point I was making on that end of it, but they always come back with they enter the name Trump, and once they enter Trump, then they say, well Antifa is anti-Trump, okay, and then the other entity is pro-Trump. You see what I mean? And I'm just saying, if that's the case, we got a presidential race, no problem. If Antifa is Biden, then say Biden, and if Proud Boys is Trump, let's deal with it. But we need to talk about the issues that we're faced with, and especially Portland issues. You got my point? And like you and I and a number of us are still asking the question, where does that fit? What is the definition of Antifa here in the Portland metropolitan area. Because we'll never get down to the solution if we keep evoking i.e. the name Trump. Because as you know, the media has been bringing the Trump issue to this up to this date, for that matter. Ever since this man was picked, if you will, to represent the Republican Party, it's been just a one-party system aspect of it. You know what I'm
Actually,
saying?
I think the strongest support for Ted Wheeler came when he came out and said to ask the president not to get involved. So,
Exactly.
and to be honest, that's not what I call a leader. The issues need to be addressed here in the city with the people in the city.
You're right.
So let's not try and elevate this to a higher level.
Exactly.
We've got issues that we need to deal with front and center.
Right, and I think we got the answer right here with us. And I see Patrick's name back on. He's here. He's here out there in the audience. We're gonna pull him to the diocese right now. Let's see if we can get that technical thing out of him. See, Patrick, are you there? Is he there, Steve? Let's see. Okay, go on, speak. Can you speak? Are you there? Okay, we don't hear him.
Hey, can you hear me now?
We got you. Okay, go on. Okay, so we got Patrick here. Patrick, who's very familiar with what's going on here in the city of Portland, and we thought we'd invite him on. He's been on Oregon Voters Digest on a number of occasions, but the idea is that we thought we'd bring him on now because it's crucial and to give us an update of what's going on in the city and what are his ideas in terms of how we've got to where we are at this point in time. And he's also brought a guest with him, someone who had been very, very much involved.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Patrick Stupfel, founder of Millennials for Solidarity. We build bridges through civic engagement on the tough issues that the politicians historically ignore: prison reform, sex trafficking, Jeffrey Epstein type of thing. You know, the really tough issues that we all agree upon that nobody wants to touch like a hot potato. That's what I do. So, Bruce, good to see you again. I'm glad to be on the show again. I really appreciate it. Today I'm donning my, I didn't even plan on it, but I'm kind of a Ted Wheeler doppelganger if you kind of look like it. It's kind of a style.
You're looking great.
I think I look better than him, though. I get it tailored. He's got a weird tailor. But yeah, I'm donning the whole Ted Wheeler doppelganger persona today. But really, there's 1,000 things going on in the city of Portland. And where do you even begin, Bruce? We got wildfires all over the place. You know, it's insane. And how do you even talk about each individual one of these stories in and of themselves? Because each story has 1,000 dog paths. So I just want to jump right in for the wildfires before we go into anything else. People know that I've been blaming Ted Wheeler and really just the fact that the Portland mayor, the position of mayor, is the police commissioner. I've been raising the alarm for a long time that our system of governance is so broken that asinine, bizarre, really bad things happen on the regular because of the fact that mayor is the police commissioner. Like, case in point, 2017, we had a racist terrorist attack. Now, some people don't like calling it that, but I think that Jeremy Christian, who stabbed people to death on the MAX train after yelling racist rants, I think everybody could agree, from Joey Gibson to the Patriots to Antifa to the Democrats. I think everybody agrees that Jeremy Christian was a pretty bad dude and a pretty bad hombre. Pretty sure that what he was saying was racist. And I'm pretty sure stabbing 3 people to death for no reason on a train is kind of a terrorist attack. If you look at what happened in France, we had a U.S. veteran save the lives of people. Was that a knife attack or a gun attack? I think they had both in France, or a lot of them. I lose track. But we had a veteran in Oregon who's running for office, by the way, saved the lives of people on that train in France. And he got, I believe, a Medal of Honor or something, and a Legion of Merit or something from France. And they called that incident a terrorist attack. But the very same situation that happened on a MAX commuter train right here in Portland, Oregon, where a racist gentleman murders people in cold blood, somehow we're not allowed to call that a terrorist attack. And I want to ask the question, why? Because I believe it was, and a lot of other people do. So that's really the meat of it. What's going on in Portland right now? Well, there's a lot of things going on. There's protests every single night. There's, fires in the forest and fires in the streets. And sometimes you really don't know who's causing them. So to the point of who is Antifa, you really never really can get a concrete answer on that, because really it's who's down there. Well, there's protesters, there's mothers, there's sometimes children, there's like homeless people of all different kinds. You really can't just nail down one and say this is that or that. But what I can say concretely is that Portland is burning, and it has been for a while. There's no leadership. There's a lack thereof. I used to advise, a lot of different politicians in this town at a young age, and I'm missing the days when we had more concrete, albeit stern leaders. I'll just say, Weak Wheeler has abdicated his duty so bad that people that don't like authority are throwing firebombs into his house. Anyways, you would think Antifa would like Ted Wheeler being weak. No, they don't like him at all. They are even sick of him. So one thing I wanted to say about what's happening in Portland, we know that Ted Wheeler has been blamed for a lot of things, but the forest fires, no one has even mentioned the fact that there was a homeless transient, and I've been homeless so I can talk about this. So there's a homeless transient who was arrested this last, 2 weeks or so, for throwing Molotov cocktails into the grass patch at the bike path. He set multiple blazes on fire, almost caught multiple buildings on fire. This gentleman was arrested and wait for it, under Ted Wheeler's leadership as police commissioner, just like Jeremy Christian. He was arrested and then released 12 hours later to commit more arsons with Molotov cocktails on the very same bike path that he was on in the past. So for those of you around America that are wondering what the hell is happening in the forest fires of Oregon, guess what? We almost had a forest fire in the middle of Southeast Portland because Ted Wheeler allowed a homeless person to throw Molotovs, and not just once, but repeatedly, multiple days. So this is the insanity that we're dealing with in Portland. If we're not dealing with fires in the streets, in the forests, we're literally dealing with homeless people, like possibly burning the city down. And people don't want to look at that cause and effect, but that's what we're dealing with. Crazy racist terrorists are allowed to walk around town attacking people like me and ultimately murdering people unchecked. Homeless people are throwing Molotov cocktails into grass fields, are allowed to do it the next day after being arrested and slapped on the wrist. And Reneè, she'll tell her story better than I will, but when she tells her story, you'll hear something very, very shocking about what Mayor Wheeler has been allowing inside Chapman Square for over, 2 months?
Since I've been there.
Yeah.
2 months.
So
10 weeks.
A lot's going on in Portland, and we got to have this conversation. So I don't have any concrete answers. If you have direct questions, I can try to be quick and concise about direct answers. But man, Bruce, it is a huge question. And where do you even begin?
Okay, with all due respect, we're going to probably taking a short break here shortly, but if Reneè has some time right now, why don't we just go on and bring her in right now, and if we need to add more after our break, we'll do that. Introduce her real quick. Welcome aboard, Reneè. What's going on?
Thanks for having me on.
Sure.
So this year's Reneè Ramey. I met Reneè at the protest downtown, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a Politico and an insider. I've worked in politics for many, many years. Usually wear a suit and tie, so the fact that I'm going into the depths of Mordor, or hell, as they say, it's kind of funny. Like, I look like Ted Wheeler. I used to advise Ted Wheeler, and I'm walking into the ranks of the people cussing him out. Why would I do that? Because, amazing people like Reneè are there. That's why I would do it. It's not that there's a bunch of crazy, evil people down there. Amazing house, like suburban people who actually care about the community are actually in these protests. So Reneè is an angel. I'll just say it like that. I met Reneè when she was helping people amidst the protests. And she'll be back the next half.
What? That's right. We'll be right back, Reneè. At least we got your face. We're just going to go on and take this short break. It takes about 5 minutes or so. We're going to come right back, and you'll be right on board. Okay?
Thank you.
Sounds good. We'll take a short break, folks, and we'll be right back with you. Welcome back, folks. As you can see, we had quite a bit of technical problem. I'll just say communication piece on the front end aspect of it. So bear with us. We're going to always correct it one way or the other. The fact of the matter is we're on, and we're here to help you. We've been around a number of years. Okay, as we were saying, that the first half we did some introductions, and that's that. The other we had Jack Kerfoot on, and you might go back and look at that again if you want to. Also the neighbors and whatever. But again, like I said, this is community television. And then we had Patrick, who has been on for a number of times, and he gave us a little interview, which was a good interview, by the way, a good update, if you will, on what's going on in the Portland metro area. And then we got a special guest with us today, Reneè Ramey, and she's here with us, and boy, she has a story to tell. In fact, I still think about that story that Tom Potter. Remember Tom Potter, who used to be chief of police, Portland Police, and then he was mayor for a term also too. And he too tried to do some things downtown as far as the homeless youth and whatever. Well, when I heard Patrick, he was telling me about Renee's story, her piece, and what she was trying to do. I was really excited about it, and through Pat, we've invited her to come on the show. And so I'll just say, Pat, just introduce her a little quickly again, and let the people know who she was, for those who missed the first half. Okay?
Thanks so much, Bruce. I appreciate it. This is my good friend Reneè. Reneè uses they, them pronouns. I know that's hard for some people. It's hard for me even sometimes. But I think it's important in 2020 that we also learn to kind of adapt, because that just changes constant. But Reneè is amazing, amazing person. I met Reneè at the Portland protest. Reneè is an example of one of just the many types of people that you'll meet at a protest. When I met Reneè, Reneè was driving around giving out socks and food and just almost anything you can imagine, to bandanas, medical supply, to protesters, homeless people, whoever needed something. Reneè was there to connect with you, even lend you, a helpful hand or a piece of advice, or just to be a shoulder to cry on or an ear. Reneè just quickly showed herself to me to be an angel in the midst of chaos. So without further ado, Reneè Ramey.
Hey, Reneè, tell us your story. One, how'd you come here? How'd you get here, and why?
Thanks, Bruce. This may be the first time it's ever uttered in this way, because the story keeps changing. COVID is difficult, and I just want to say that I feel a lot of solidarity with the folks in the suburbs, that being locked up this long and then enduring the entire summer together. Now you're doing online school indefinitely, that the numbers of COVID are going up. It's extremely stressful, even if you have a house and a job and your kids have a Chromebook. But right now, it was too much for us. I left to come and do frontline work. My husband works at home. The kids can live at home. It wouldn't make sense for me to go and come with COVID in the world. It made more sense for me to go. But I couldn't leave my family. I couldn't leave for other people when I have kids. They're 12, 13, and 15. And there's COVID and it's stressful. And but it's just too much. I ended up coming down on July 27th. I had come to the protest. My first night was July 24th. It was the night that Ted Wheeler was there. I didn't know what to expect. I came without a gas mask, but I came and I listened. It was extremely scary. The crowd, we were way in the back. The crowd was like singing "Fuck Ted Wheeler." It was so creepy and weird. And I was seeing on Twitter that he was going to be there. I didn't really believe it. They hauled a body up in front. I couldn't really see very well. I thought, oh my God, they've got an effigy of Ted Wheeler and they're going to rip him to shreds in front of me. It was that kind of a mob energy, but it wasn't. It was actually Ted Wheeler. That's just what I thought at the moment. Just being in the crowd. Wait, they dragged
Ted Wheeler as a body up there?
They kind of helped him up, but from my vantage point, it looked like a stuffed mannequin. By the 27th, I had moved to the Radisson. I moved downtown. I lived at the Radisson for 3.5 weeks, and I will just shout out to the Radisson Red. Those people are amazing. If you're having a crisis, go to the Radisson. They will hook you up. No questions asked. They're the best. The Radisson is where I went after I got assaulted in the park. So I've been going down to Chapman ever since the protest sort of waned and they moved out to the suburbs. And who was left after all the tear gas cleared was the homeless. And they were the people, my heart melted that they would have to be there every day for 60 days and endure that kind of tear gassing. I had met Spotted Eagle on the sidewalk. He was drunk and tear gassed, and he had his face was streaming. And there was a woman there trying to help him, but she didn't have any way. And I had that baking soda spray that I had read online how to mix. And I had only ever sprayed into one other person's eyes, and he had assured me he wasn't blind. And so when I saw Spotted Eagle, I told him that, and I was like, do you want me to spray you in the face with this stuff I mixed up in my hotel bathroom? And he said, yes. And I sprayed him in the eyes with it. His eyes opened, like, hallelujah look. And he said, what is that? That works. So it was a feeling that gave me a feeling that you can't like describe. I was able to, just by virtue of standing there and making that small effort to look up that recipe, that I could help somebody see again. That was such a moment for me that a one person can make a huge difference in the moment if they are just there. So I just made it my thing that I just kept showing up with the stuff that people needed. I was there one night after the speeches from Jamal and Seneca and Itchy, and I had met a mom with a 4-year-old, and I was exchanging phone numbers with her because she's having a hard time and her relationships are falling apart, and we're trying to band together down there. You see, we're trying to make new communities because our families are kicking us out. You know, we're being ejected, or else we're leaving voluntarily because it's too much friction where we are, or the call is too strong. We have to come home. We can't stay home in our privilege. We have to step out of our comfort zone. And when I did that, I've never felt so good. I stopped reading the news. I only pay attention to what's important to me, which is why I found this network. Because up until now, the stuff that happened in Portland wasn't relevant in North Plains, not really. And now that I live here, I have a condo. I'm a resident of Portland, and I care very much about who gets elected mayor this year. While I was on Chapman, there was a man who had been injured in a scuffle of sorts. There was a fight downtown. There's always fights downtown among the homeless when there's constant thieving, you know, and there's drug use. So there's like a lack. There's always a lack. There's never enough of things. There's never enough. And so there's this petty thievery, and it feels really, it's life-threatening to be robbed sometimes. It's not okay. And so the reactions that they get are really big reactions. There's this huge upset. You know, this is a real trauma. The people who are on the streets are being traumatized literally every single day. They have to sleep outside every single night. They don't know if they're going to wake up with their tent in the morning, or that their wallet will still be there where they left it. They've been dragged out of their tents at night by the police. They've had the police rip their tents into the street. They're not safe from literally anybody down there, and yet they stay. And the longer it goes without a sweep, it's been 3 or 4 weeks now, there's a whole community that's sprung up. There's like 12 or 15 tents. There's a group of people that are like anchors in the community. We're right outside the jail. When somebody's released from jail, total stranger, they'll walk up. Every single one that I've met has been mentally ill and really, really in a bad spot coming out of jail. That's a really tough moment for a person. And they wander over to our camp because we're a little group. And I'll tell you what, as a community, we can welcome that person back into society without any disaster. It can happen. You can tell somebody that they're okay in a way that they hear it, because they're coming out feeling like there's nothing left to live for. I mean, there's just nothing left. So then you add into this with the drugs, you have these teenagers, right? They're probably runaways. They maybe been to a shelter, but they don't like it there. They've been molested there. They don't trust it. Or now they have drugs in their system. They can't go back. Or somebody told on them and got them kicked out. So there's all this crazy, ridiculous, like 8th grade backstabbing that happens among all of them, which isn't surprising because they've probably been traumatized since 8th grade, right? I mean, how can you expect somebody to behave like an adult if they haven't had the privilege of getting a childhood, right? So we're asking adults to be adults when in fact they've never been given a proper childhood. They were denied that. And now we're holding them accountable and we put them in jail. So we have artists that come down and literally are the most unviolent, non-violent humans I've ever met, but they will strike you if you hit them, right? They are not doormats. They're not nobody. They are somebody. They have dignity. They're not going to just sit there and get kicked and tripped and stolen from. We have artists that are locked up, but we have rapists, people who are giving out the drugs and hooking these 17 and 18-year-old girls and then sneaking them off, getting them high under pretenses, and then raping them. And then the girls have nowhere to go. They literally have no one to tell. They have no home, like shelter. Now they've got drugs in their system. Oh, maybe it's like past, 6 p.m. There's literally not a shelter available to them. There is not one single place they can go except back to their abuser.
And this is all under the leadership of Portland Mayor and Police Commissioner Tevis Wheeler.
They've abandoned the squares. There's no cops there at all. I mean, we are not next to the jail and we see them coming and going, but they never come out to help or anything.
Let me be very clear. Let me be clear, my fellow Americans. Ted Wheeler allows miles in the park.
I have a better idea. I have a way that we can do this.
Going on.
Okay, so there's a bunch of empty buildings down there in the downtown district. And one of the Trump tax cut schemes is the opportunity zone. Have you guys already covered that here?
No.
So this is something I know about because I'm wealthy, that they created these opportunity zones across the country. The governors of your state declared areas of their cities, of their state, an opportunity zone. And it's an area the governor decided needed more investment in it, like their business districts, really. And so what they've done is if you buy a property there and you do anything with it, you fix it somehow, do something new, you can, and you hold it for 10 years, you never pay property. You never pay that tax, the interest, whatever it is, the federal tax. They just give it away. They're giving away the building if you hold it. So it's for anybody who wants to sock their money away. They can invest in one of these cities, downtowns. So these buildings are sitting empty. Nobody wants them, particularly the one right next to the federal building that's been gassed forever. It's been sitting open, I don't know how long, and it's an auditorium built in 1894. And it was sold in 2008 for $3 million, and it was sold again in 2012 for $2.8 million. And it's only assessed at $1.4 million. Nobody wants it. Nobody's gonna want it, but I'm telling you, I want it. I wanna open it to this community that's sprung up in Chapman. I think that the floor in Portland can't be the street. It can't be the street. It has to be dry. It has to have running water so they can wash up and stay clean and not catch COVID. And it has small community groups where we create beloved communities within a single building. And I'm telling you, we can offer this to the people who have already built their own communities. There are people right now that have formed a community and all they lack is a building to stay dry in and to lock their stuff away from the other people. And once we have a beloved community like that, a beloved community can incorporate 1 or 2 more people every day almost. We can spring these up all over the city. They could be all over the country.
Have you shared this story with City Hall or the county?
Well, I got a comment in on City Hall on Wednesday at about the 7:15. It was about the 1 hour and 16-minute mark.
Can we roll that clip, by the way?
Oh, that's right.
We have a clip. We have a clip. Okay, yeah. Steve, can we do that?
So this is what was said to Ted Wheeler.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we can get this done.
My name is Reneè Ramey. I am 51 years old. I moved into Portland on July 27th, having become suddenly estranged from my family due to problems, basically due to COVID, that we couldn't stay in the same house together when felt like the world was falling apart. There was George Floyd's death. There were a number of issues. I see the economic crisis coming. I can feel the homelessness. I can feel the anxiety in the lower ends of the economic ladder. I know the people who just bought houses are wondering how they're going to make ends meet if they lose their job this winter or have to quarantine for a month while people are recovering from an illness they don't understand. In the meantime, I've been hanging out around Chapman Square because when I was at my lowest, those were the people who understood me. They protected me when I was attacked by local thugs. I was kicked in the face twice, needed 11 stitches. I called 911. I had been on the phone with 911 for over 5 minutes when I was attacked. I left the phone ringing on 911 to run away. And then I went to the Radisson where my hotel was with the help of the homeless friends. And the police never answered the phone for the Radisson. So the Radisson has a report of this attack, but the police don't. They never answered the phone. This is under Mayor Ted Wheeler's watch. This is unacceptable. And meanwhile, we have like artists, people who want to just make art are now locked up because they're mentally ill. They really are suffering from a problem. And we have rapists walking free, distributing drugs and ensnaring young women into sex trafficking. The women are trapped. I know at least 2 that wanted to get off the street. At least 1 was desperate to get off the street. And I drove around until 1 in the morning in the middle of the smoke with no place to take her, no place that was open, nothing that would work. Because she had drugs in her system. We're failing. This is a Black woman. We are failing our Black women and girls. We're failing our LGBTQ community. We can do better if we had the resources to buy a building and maintain it ourselves. I'd like to talk about this more offline. Thank you.
Right. So go on, Reneè. Now, what about other activities within the area that you might have been that you shared that you can share with us in terms of what's going on in the whole issue of protesting? What about other support groups that you might have met?
Oh yeah, well, I help with the mom block for one thing. So I started off with the wall of moms. I stood next to Demetria Hester my first night. It was a Friday night, and I stood there till 2:20 in the morning. with the feds coming out off and on all night long. It was intense and surreal. I stuck around with them. I know it dissolved and came back together, and so now we're following Demetra Hester still, but it's Moms United for Black Lives. And we have a group of people who support everybody. So there's jail support, there's announcements and comms, and we helped with the PPS distributing food to all the students last week, or during the smoke. Remember the smoke? They stopped delivering meals for lunch. And so we went up to Alberta and delivered meals.
Huh. Well, now, tell me this now. What about the administration? Are they reaching? Do you see any noticeable reaching out entities that were coming out and basically saying, okay, fine, what else can we do for support? Like organizing you, putting you on a list, if you will, saying, okay, fine, we want to put you on this list, and then making some announcements at the beginning of the protesting or whatever. I mean, I'm just throwing something out that they.
Yeah, no, I have no visibility in the protests. I'm just helping the homeless now. I'm here for Black Lives Matter. There's a lot of Black people on the street, and honestly, I think almost all of them identify as LGBTQ in some way. This is a major LGBTQ problem, and it's not talked about at all. And we do a lot of Black Lives Matter, but there are Black trans people who are homeless, and it's not okay. There's no reason they should be homeless.
And what about your definition of Antifa from a Portland perspective, from Portland? What does Antifa and the Patriot Prayer say to you, basically, both sides, both entities?
Okay, I like that question. Thank you so much. Because I came from the suburbs. So when the election in 2016 happened, I decided my role in this world would be to go from North Plains into the city of Portland, collect information about how to do a better job of electing the people we believe in, bring it out to the suburbs. So I was hosting, town halls for the Green New Deal, and I campaigned for different people. School board, we got Latina on the school board in Hillsborough. So Portland is this is where it's happening, right? And I came down for all of the protests to stand against the Proud Boys. And 2017, that June day I was here, I was standing in the City Hall courtyard, and I saw how the police protected the white supremacists, and we had Antifa on the one block, and we were on the one block. The white Proud Boys were across from us, and then on the third block, there was a bunch of anarchists. It was crazy. It was the middle of the day. Of course, it ended with the police attacking the protesters, of course, but there's all I can see about Antifa. Here's an Antifa story. I will tell you an actual Antifa story. There was a little person in black. My friends had come from the suburbs to see for themselves what was really happening. And this person in black started to pry off some of the plywood that was boarding up the building right there next to the Federal, right on 3rd and Salmon. And my friends were shaking. They were visibly shaking with the effort to not go and make that kid stop pulling the wood off of that building, because it wasn't his wood, right? This is the vandalism. It's happening right in front of him. He has to step up and do something. He can't just watch. And I'm telling him, oh my gosh, you guys, look over here. That's a distraction. Look at Black Lives Matter. They're distracting you from the message. Try to ignore that. And look, that didn't work at all. They could not look away from the little person pulling the wood off. So I went up to the little person and I said, look, my friends are from out of town, and I think they might get the message, but the vandalism is really bugging them. Could you get wood from someplace else? Is that possible? And he was like, oh, hey, this wood, this was beautiful murals and they painted over it. Look, it's all black now. I was like, oh yeah, you're right. This was art. This was art like a couple of days ago. Now it's all black. And he goes, yeah, I'm just getting this wood for this really fun fire over there. It's for this fun fire. And I'm thinking, oh crap, there's no such thing as a fun fire, right? Not in a city. So I'm a little worried about the fire. And I go to my friends and I'm like, look, he's not trying to vandalize the building. He's trying to get wood for a fire. Maybe we should go see what the fire's about. I've never heard of a fun fire. Maybe we should check it out and let's see what they mean by fun fire, right? We're trying to see for ourselves what's going on. And he couldn't leave. And so the little guy says, do you want me to talk to your friends? And I was like, you would do that? And so he came over to talk to them. And they said, we're really upset with you taking the wood because that business now has to pay for it to replace that wood, right? And the guy goes, no, we're not going to take that much. We just want this little piece. And then he goes, well, what about the windows behind it? The store owner will put that wood up there to protect the windows, and then the windows will be exposed, and then they'll have to pay for the windows for sure. And the kid goes, I don't think there's windows behind this one. He goes, hey, you, and some guy standing there, is there windows behind this one? And the guy's like, no, man, that's not the window one. He's like, yeah, this isn't the window one. So there may be people that call themselves Antifa, and they may be doing things like starting small fires, but from what I've seen, they don't carry weapons, and they're not damaging for the sake of damage. They appear to be using symbolic types of vandalism, like graffiti. So I'm not entirely sure. And I also have no idea if it exists. And if it does, who is doing what. I know there's random people with Molotov cocktails and stuff. I know there's random people with bricks that dress up like Antifa and smash windows sometimes. So I don't know what's happening. Everybody I've spoken to, from the medics to the right, you know, the Trump supporter who was scrubbing the steps of the Nike building because God told us to figure it out, all of them said they came down, just me. I'm not with anybody. It's just me. Just me.
Well, what about law enforcement? What about the police? You see anybody in uniform looking at some of the things that you're doing? I'm saying, you seeing yourself. You see anybody actively coming from, let's say, police or whatever, intervening, if you will, or whatever?
No. I was on hold with 911 for like 5 minutes. No, I haven't seen any police do anything except arrest my friends for being a little like off their meds, literally.
Reneè was almost murdered. I'll just say what people won't say. I'll say what Ted Wheeler won't even allow anyone to utter out of their mouth on his staff. Reneè was almost murdered.
How was that?
Homeless people saved her life.
It's possible.
Homeless people saved her life. Friends of mine saved her life.
That's true.
So,
this is why I keep going back to help them. It's one of the reasons. I mean, that's one of the reasons. I had nobody with me that night. Those were the people who fucking got up and helped me. Sorry.
How did that happen?
I mean, I feel just as tense and traumatized and irritated and angry and upset about it as you do, and then some, because I know Ted Wheeler personally, and this is a rerun for me because I was threatened by a crazy racist named Jeremy Christian. Some of you know that, some of you don't. And Ted Wheeler, his cops and him, because of him, he did nothing. And people died on a train. 2 people are dead in a horrific horror show stabbing that you couldn't even write a script for a movie. And so I've been banging the drum for that for 3 years now, over 3 years. And Ted Wheeler still has not resigned for causing a racist terrorist attack, period. Surprising he hasn't resigned for that, but you know, that's part of the reason why people have been protesting his house. So anyways, I get really upset. It's personally very upsetting to see people like Reneè, who are angels to me in the protest, when people like Ted Wheeler, who I know, ignore my whistleblowing, ignore my prophecies. And then this woman here helps me out, and then she almost gets murdered because of Ted, and Ted has nothing to say to her in a town hall. Nothing. But he wants to interject and rebuttal about random, irrelevant things to people who are talking about much lower level things. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm okay. Here.
Well, one last piece. I mean, now that Jack and those guys are involved in the process, what are you feeling and what are you hearing, if you will, about this event that's going to be happening this Saturday? And they're constantly making the point about the Proud Boys and this, that, and the other coming to town. These are outsiders, and all of a sudden everybody's yelling about outsiders coming in. Don't come in, don't come in. But then I looked at prior to that and looked at the so-called individuals that sort of welcome them to come in, if you will. And media was just kind of like, oh, this is what we're getting ready to have, and nobody's doing anything. I mean, even to the point of maybe giving them a permit, if you will, to go to Delta Park. I thought that was crazy. I don't know all the full story about it, but I saw basically there was a commissioner. And I think she, let me see, who was that, Jack? That basically was identified as the Parks Commissioner.
I believe that's now Chloe Daly is now.
No, not Chloe. No, not Chloe. No, not Chloe. It was the other one. The other one that's retiring. What was her name?
Oh, okay. Amanda.
That's okay.
Amanda.
Amanda. Said Amanda was she, but and then all of a sudden, you know that in all due respect, Ted signed off on it. Had to sign off on it, so to speak. But why even have that kind of a discussion at this point in time? I mean, you promise someone, and I'm not trying to say that I would support the group one way or the other, but on one side, they're constantly talking about freedom of speech and the amendment, and this, that, and the other. And then on the other side, we just don't want that to happen. I mean, where do we go from here? Reneè, Jack, anybody can come. Anybody want to talk about this? Reneè, Jack?
Well, there is one point I'd like to get back to, Reneè. You talked about sex trafficking, and that's one of the issues that no one wants to talk about. I saw an FBI study that was done, and we're talking about over 120 to 130 victims a year, over per year, over a 4-year period of time. And we're not talking about prostitution. What we're talking about is children. The average age on the FBI study said it was 15 and a half, and the youngest was 8 years old. It was predominantly women, but it was also young boys and also transgender. And the FBI's estimate is if you think it's 120, 130, that's really only 10% of the numbers that are here. We're second only to Las Vegas in sex trafficking. So we've become a center for sex trafficking because of inaction, which I find reprehensible for the city council to let this happen.
Reneè, anything?
All I can tell you is what I've seen on the street, and what I see is a lot of traumatized kids. What I'm seeing are people that don't fit in the places they've been told they have to live. And then the alternative choices they get, maybe it's a foster home, maybe it's a car, they ran away in a car, trying to live out of that, maybe graduate from high school. It can't work. It's not working. None of it works. The way we have our system set up, there's no way for a child under 18 to emancipate themselves from an abusive situation, except by possibly ending up on the street. We need to get kids away to get their own voices heard and have like legal representation somehow. I don't know any other way to do it.
Do you see any personnel from Multnomah County, let's say armbands, if you will? Because that's really the county's responsibility, if you will, to deal with those kinds of issues. Mental illness, you know what I mean? Traumatic things of that nature aspect. I mean, I thought about that. I said, why not have Multnomah County, the kinds of monies that they've been picking up lately? You would think maybe somebody with armbands of some sort that says Multnomah County. And this would be an identifiable aspect of it. And people like yourself who's reaching out, they can actually approach you and say, hey, look here, what can we do? What are you doing? Well, this is what I'm doing, et cetera. This is what I'd like to do. Can I help? Oh, yes. Let's see, look at the list. Yes, we need someone like you. Okay, let's see, what can we do to equip you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do you see that?
Yes, awesome. That would be awesome.
See, those are the kinds of things that we need because the county and the city are supposed to be working together. And that's why when we began the program, the whole idea is that the Portland Police the Portland Police, if you will, they administer law enforcement from the city side. And then the county is the jailer, okay? They're supposed to be the jailers, okay? But now all of a sudden, the former Portland Police is now the county sheriff, and now they're doing the policing. and they do not want to relate with Portland policing. In most cases, the identifiable, excuse the French, the identifiable chief of police with the Portland Police is the union president. It's really a sad note aspect of it. And I've met the gentleman, you know what I mean? But it's a total chaos situation. And again, it gets right, just like Patrick saying, it gets down to where's the leadership? We've elected a mayor. You know, where is the leadership? That's his job. And if they don't have someone to direct them to do that job, then guess what? They'll just do it themselves. And that's why we're in this chaos right now, as far as I'm just throwing that out. I'm putting it on the table. Anybody want to have any discussions? Seconds on that? Pat?
Most definitely, and it's something that I've been wanting to get to for a while. For a long time, people thought it was bombastic, a little too much for me to say that Mayor Wheeler caused a racist terrorist attack. And although that was exactly the truth with Jeremy Christian, how much more do we have to show you folks, America, Portland, the world, that Ted Wheeler needs to be arrested? And they thought it was bombastic that I said that he caused a terrorist attack. There is a precedent. After you saw what happened to my friend Reneè here, and she was almost murdered for trying to save children from being drugged and raped inside Chapman Square. If I don't need to be more clear about how a clear and present danger Ted Wheeler is to this community, then I don't know how clear I have to be. President Trump did send DHS in, Department of Homeland Security, and honestly, I am baffled that they have been cutting open my own tent, by the way, in the park, harassing someone who knows the mayor who's sleeping, but yet they're not no-knock raiding Ted Wheeler's house for the Mac stabbing that traumatized me in the first place, that he allowed to cause. So if the Department of Homeland Security is serious, if Bill Barr is serious, if the president is serious about going after terrorists and those who condone them and those who enable them, then the number one person who needs to be arrested tonight is Mayor Tevis Wheeler in his role of police commissioner, because he has literally allowed, aided, and abetted terrorists. And I mean terrorists in the sense of Jeremy Christian, and he has also allowed the drugging and raping of children in Portland parks. Mm-hmm. And the people who blow the whistle are almost murdered. So yes, I do believe that it's time for the DOJ to no-knock raid the mayor's house. And I think that Antifa, the left, the right, would have a block party supporting that.
Well, if I can make one comment, when I was campaigning, I reached out to a lot of different nonprofits trying to deal and help the homeless. And one of them was Rose Haven, which was for primarily women, but also LGBTQ people as well. And their comment was that it's only a day shelter, but they said quite candidly, the city has abandoned us. I talked about establishing networks between other nonprofits, and she said, we're an island out here, and we have to turn away people because the fire marshal says we can only hold about 300 people in this facility. And how they get 300 in there, I don't know. It would be elbow to elbow. But these people are being exploited. And her comment to me was, when a woman or an LGBTQ person is on the street, they're assaulted within the first 72 hours. And that's probably a conservative estimate. It's probably sooner than that. So the children that are on the streets right now are vulnerable and are being exploited. And this has to stop. And that has to be a priority, along with a long list of priorities that our city council has not acted on over the past 4 years.
Well, look here, I'll tell you what we're going to do. I know we're running out of time to a certain degree, but I'd really like to have the same team here, because this particular show is going to be shown just prior to the Saturday events. Okay, actually shown, and we're actually afterwards. So next Friday or so. Well, I don't know what Steve's what his schedules are right now. He's a working man. I mean, but the bottom line is that we'll see what we can do. But the idea is to have this same group to chat a little bit about what happened Saturday. We're actually recording on a Friday, and then tomorrow is going to be, the Saturday is going to be the event. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But again, we add to the 100 days of it, right? You got me? The big thing now is about this big force, and some are estimating the crowd to be 10 to 20 to 30,000 people from outside of Portland. Give me a break. I mean, you know, I don't understand something. And the other thing too is that when I think about the presidential, like going to the other level aspect of it, and people don't like the idea of government troops coming in or whatever, or government law enforcement aspect of it. See, to me, this is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. You got me? And the president has the authority, if you will, to federalize the National Guard. And these are people living next door to you, right here in the city. Why can't he federalize the so-called National Guard and identify those individuals that are in the Guard that lives in Portland, Oregon? Therefore, they could recognize, if you will, the citizens and whatever. Put armbands on people like Reneè and folks like that. I mean, organize that group aspect of it. And in some cases, those folks that are being released because they were just there looking at the affair, put armbands on them and put them on right in the front of the businesses and whatever, and saying, okay, fine, they will be the guard. Let the people participate that way. I mean, someone needs to organize what we're doing and get down to business, because this is really a sad. We were the city of roses. Beautiful place. Beautiful place. Now, in all due respect, here I am. I'm a senior citizen, and I paid my dues. And I'm looking at having a good cup of coffee right downtown, you know, on the weekends, and walking around and taking it easy and talking about Jack's 101st, if you will, and he's talking about the core. But the fact, man, and there's Pat, you know, who's running for office, and Reneè heading an organization and doing the things he wants to do. And in all due respect, we've been in the development business. I've been in the development business. I built the senior citizen complex here. I'd be more than glad to be Reneè's builder, if you will, and put that piece together for her. No, it won't cost anything, because the vets can do it. We run an organization called No Vets Left Behind, non-profit organization. We'd be more than glad to help her develop that building. Because in all due respect, I ran for county commissioner the last time around, and brought a building that had been sitting around here at the county that they had built for about $90 million or so, and was sitting on the blocks, and they gave it away not too long ago for $5 million. A beautiful building that could house 500 beds, whatever. And trust me, that was the campaign. And trust me, it was a sad note about, at the end of the day, the building is still empty. They're refurbishing it. And we got all these people that are sitting out there in the streets, homeless.
There's a lot of people who can't go to Helping Hands at Wapato because cannabis is legal, and a lot of young homeless people smoke cannabis, and don't have a problem with that, but they might have problems with other things, but they can't even go to Wapato for things like alcohol or cannabis, even if they're not alcoholic or a drug addict. It's just like there's a lot of barriers, and we're looking for something that is a little bit more all-inclusive.
Well, Pat, I think we need another campaign. Jack, we need another campaign. Looks like we're going to have to do a write-in on the whole issue of Wapato, bring it to the table. Renee's here. I mean, she could be part of the committee, the group. That's here. We got part of the group aspect of it. And they might even bring Teresa Rayford to the table and hopefully convince her that, in all due respect, you shouldn't be doing a write-in on the Ted Wheeler piece, because that'll take votes from Sarah to a certain degree. Let Sarah win this piece, and so we'll get someone there, because I'm concerned about that.
I will personally lead the recall.
And I would say to Teresa, she can join the group, and we could do some good things. There you go. There you go. Well, right now, he just needs to step aside. He really needs to step aside. So and that'll offset a lot of the divide that we have in our city aspect of it, and give this other person, because that's, like I said, there's only 2 people running for office right now. And that's why I got out of the write-in deal, because the people were asking me to do a write-in. Well, that's not going to do any good. If anything, it's just going to give him more advantage. We'll have the same problems after November. Okay? Well, look, we got a lot more to talk about. Folks, you hear where I'm coming from. Tell your neighbors. I mean, we had a little technical difficulty, and in all due respect, bear with us. We'll see you next week, and we'll have the same group, and we'll talk about what happened Saturday. Again, this has been great. Reneè, thank you very much. Thanks for being part of the team. Matt, as usual, always a good deal. And Jack, you're the guy. You're the man. All right. And Steve has the background. Thank you very much, folks. Enjoy your day, and be careful. Be safe.
So there may be people that call themselves Antifa, and they may be doing things like starting small fires, but from what I've seen, they don't carry weapons, and they're not damaging for the sake of damage. They appear to be using symbolic types of vandalism, like graffiti. So I'm not entirely sure, and I also have no idea if it exists, and if it does, who is doing what. I know there's random people with Molotov cocktails and stuff. I know there's random people with bricks that dress up like Antifa and smash windows sometimes. So I don't know what's happening. Everybody I've spoken to, from the medics to the right, the Trump supporter who was scrubbing the steps of the Nike building because God taught them to figure it out, all of them said they came down just me. I'm not with anybody. It's just me. Just me.
Well, what, Reneè? Jack?
Well, there is one point I'd like to get back to, Reneè. You talked about sex trafficking, and that's one of the issues that no one wants to talk about. I saw an FBI study that was done, and we're talking about over 120 to 130 victims a year, over per year, over a 4-year period of time. But we're not talking about prostitution. What we're talking about is children. The average age on the FBI study said is 15 and a half, and the youngest was 8 years old. It was predominantly women, but it was also young boys and also transgender. And the FBI's estimate is, if you think it's 120, 130, it's really only 10% of the numbers that are here. We're second only to Las Vegas in sex trafficking. So we've become a center for sex trafficking because of inaction, which I find reprehensible for the city council to let this happen.